everyone. What's going on? Happy Tuesday. This is Camille as the host of the Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast where innovators and creators connect. Be sure to hit that notification bell and subscribe. We have a phenomenal guest tonight as we close out season 11 of the Speaker Podcast. So I need you to like, share. Also follow me on Instagram at Camille.Essick and subscribe at YouTube at Camille Essick Official. Of course, you know we have merchandise available on my pages. Good Black Men Official is out right now. We have merchandise for our brothers. Why? Because all of them are not bad. That's why Good Black Men exists. I also have my Amazon storefront. We have goodies for all the girls that are available right now. Also catch my digital products on my Etsy store, as well as Chemistry Room Fragrances. I have the newest fragrances available to refresh your space. Our newest fragrance is Island Kiss. Trust me, it is the official scent of summer. So we're going to hop right into tonight's conversation with the one and only Dr. Matisa Wilbon. Faith Covenant is in the house, so I need you all to show her some love. Hey, Dr. Wilbon.
Hey there. Oh my gosh. I was like, come on, entrepreneur. Come on, businesses. Come on, roll them on out.
Tithes and offering. Okay.
I love it. Hey, girl.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing so well. I've been excited about this all day, so I'm glad to talk to you right now.
You too. And you did shut down the cruise. I saw your video with the karaoke queen. I was like, yes.
Let me tell you something. What was funny about it is I was there for a women's conference. And so all the ladies came down and they were there, to support me. And nobody has really seen me do karaoke because I'm a little more reserved normally, but karaoke time, all the women's are off. So it was a lot of fun, a great crowd. It was exciting.
Awesome. What did Billy Ocean say? The Caribbean Queen?
I'm not sure if I take that title, but I'll tell you what, I will do karaoke if it's available for sure.
And aren't you a graduate of the Ohio State?
Yes, I am. The Ohio State University. I am indeed.
So fun fact, I was born in Ohio.
Ah.
Yes, my family, I was born in Ohio. My dad, rest in peace, he is from Dayton. My mom's from Cleveland.
Okay.
And I was born in Columbus. So
that is so funny. So of course in Columbus for Ohio State, my husband is from Akron.
Wow.
So, so Cleveland, Dayton, Fairfield, China, all of those little areas I've definitely frequented over in my life.
Yeah. Awesome. Anytime there's college football, Michigan is the rival. I'm always screaming for Ohio State every time. Right. So one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring you on, this episode started from a text message. We had a little conversation back and forth. So I don't know if you guys have seen this movie on Netflix called Man Called Otto. First of all, by the end of the movie, Dr. Wilbon, the credits are rolling and I'm sitting here doing the ugly cry. Like I was so sad. It touched me in so many ways.
Yes.
And we started having this conversation about community. And I was like, oh, we need to definitely talk about this. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Wilbon, for those that are not familiar, in the movie, Tom Hanks plays this man named Otto. Mm-hmm. We don't know until later on, like his family had passed away, some tragic things had happened. And so he pretty much lost the will to live. And this man is determined to die. It's like dark comedy. It's like every time he is trying to end himself, he gets interrupted by a neighbor, something happens. Yes. So can we first talk about Dr. Wilbon? First of all, and you just did a TED Talk on grief. Mm-hmm. So can you kind of unpack for us, the viewers and listeners, not just with someone dying, but life and like life happens and it can get you in a place and it just paralyzes you and makes you just not want to even do this anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of that. I remember our text exchange. When I started watching the movie, there were so many things happening. So like you said, there was comedy, you're watching this guy's life and you don't know exactly the backstory. It's being, it's unfolding as time goes on. And I don't want to give it away. Hopefully somebody goes and watches it because there's so many messages in the story. But to your point, one of the things that struck both of us is the fact, and this is the way I kind of framed it, they would not let him die. The community, the people around him would not let him die. And to your point, there's so many things that happened in his life that did make him feel hopeless to some degree, or, sad to the point where he felt like he no longer wanted to be alive. And I think it's great that you point that out because sometimes, whether you're in the church or not, it's hard for people to understand what's happening inside. The reality is when life does life to the point where you do feel hopeless or there's such a darkness that surrounds you that you cannot see the light, it can get to the point where you feel like it's probably just going to be better if I'm not here. Or to make the pain stop, the present pain stop, let me just end it all. But the message is we have to be the light for somebody. I mean, there have been times that I've talked to people who said, listen, I just don't want to do this anymore. And you have to allow God to give you the words. And for me, praying, like, God, give me the exact thing to say that's really going to be that light bulb. And that's what's great about this movie. He found that in community. He found that in community.
So the power of community,
Yes.
because the Hispanic family, well, the Hispanic neighbor, the lady,
Mhm.
she was so fixated on interjecting herself into Otto's life
Mhm.
just because, she's an expecting mother. I'm not a parent, but just she had a natural joy, a light about herself, very optimistic. You see the neighbor, he's just jogging up and down the street. There were a lot of comical moments, what I call comic relief.
Mhm.
But this particular neighbor, it was almost like the mother instinct. She knew something was off, and she brought him food, which was a sign of nourishment, or, "Hey, let me feed you." Food, what they say is, a way to a man's heart is through his stomach, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so when you have this community around you, some neighbors had no clue. They were so into their own lives, they kinda missed what was happening with Otto. But this
Mhm.
one particular neighbor, she pushed herself into her life. So, Dr. Wilbon, what do you say to people that have people kind of interject and then you push them away, but it's almost like God is saying, like, no, you need this person.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's twofold. On one hand, it could be us, like we're experiencing the challenges and somebody's trying to get in, right? We put up these walls, and that was what happened for him. So many things in life just made him put up all of these walls. And when, like you said, the neighbor who lived across the street and other folks tried to get in, he pushed them away. Most people just took it, right? But this one, hey, thanks, Nancy. Um,
Hey,
the Latina woman across the street, she was like, no, I don't know if it was part of her culture or, like you said,
right.
the nurturing part of her. She was going to press in. And sometimes for us, we have to allow ourselves to let other people in. Because the reality is, even if you haven't experienced exactly what I've gone through, this idea of empathy can be the bridge between us. Maybe you didn't experience the death, talking about grief, or maybe you didn't experience the job loss, but I've experienced something that can be the bridge. But the other side of that is, and I think this is equally as important, there are going to be people in your life and in my life who pushed us out. Sometimes we only look at that behavior and think, okay, well, if you don't want me to talk to you, or if you don't want me to get in, I'm not even going to try. But the reality is there is a root there. And especially if God puts that burden in our hearts, we need to push in, because you never know what God is going to do. We can't stop at the behavior. We have to try to push ourselves into the degree that we can, so that we can help somebody who might be in a really, really dark place.
That's good. Dr. Wilbon, do you believe that sometimes people push back because they have what I call they can be the warden and the prisoner of their own jail they create because of past hurts, rejections, abandonment issues. So your mind, it's like you want to love or have a community, but because of things that happened in the past, I don't want to, I refuse to let that happen to me again.
That's
So
right.
I'm going to get you off of me first,
Yep.
so there's a kickback. So what is your advice to people that are in that space that kind of live their lives on the defense, and maybe we can say that, and
Mhm.
just say, hey, you're in this bondage mentally, emotionally, but yes, you have the opportunity to hit the restart button and start over.
Yeah, the short answer to your question is absolutely. I think that happens. And I think the advice that I would give is, number one, you have to recognize it, right? This is the framework that I give to people that I coach, clients of mine. Number one, you've got to recognize it. You have to identify that I, in fact, have a wall up. Often what we do is we justify our behavior, right?
Mhm.
Well, this is just how I am. Or, this is what happened to me last time. But we really have to reflect back on ourselves and say, listen, I've got some real trust issues. Doesn't mean that they aren't warranted. Doesn't mean that somebody maybe hasn't done something, to betray you or whatever. Once I acknowledge it, I have to make a choice. Number two, to say, I don't want to live like this, because the reality is love takes risks. It's
Mm,
risky. If I'm opening myself up to you in community or in a relationship, there is a risk that you might hurt me. That's just a reality. But my need and desire to be part of a community, to be loved by other people, has to be greater than the risk that perhaps I might get hurt again. Because as lives, people are going to hurt, right? Because people do people. So again, acknowledge it, choose, and then put into the world what you want to receive, right?
that's really
When
good.
we talk about this principle of reaping and sowing, often we limit it, especially in the church. Hey, Shamicia, we limit it to, giving, as far as, hey, Candace, as far as, I'm sorry, Camille, I'm just talking to everybody.
You're
Um,
fine.
I love seeing the folks jump in. But
Yes.
what I was saying is love takes risks. And once we identify it and choose it, then we have to decide, I want to give it because that's what I want and need in return. And let me just underscore that word need.
Hmm.
I believe, Camille, that God created us for community. He
Yes.
started with Adam, but then he made Eve, right? He creates the first family. The Bible talks about in the New Testament the fact that if you look at the family, that it mirrors, right, the church. He says, I put the solitary in what? In families. I believe that our greatest power is in community.
I totally agree. One of the things, and not to be super churchy, but my platform is a faith based, and we do talk about God here. Period. That's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
The scripture came to my mind. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that doesn't, when I read that, it doesn't just apply to your spiritual life, but we have a lot of worlds going on in our minds, right? You have a world of rejection, you have a
Mhm.
world of hurt, you have a world of abandonment,
Yes.
right? We have a world of low self esteem, lack of confidence, a world of discouragement. And so when you're in those worlds, you cannot conform to those worlds. Even though those things happen in your life, don't
Yeah.
conform to it. But you
Right.
also have to transform your mind into what? First of all, putting on uh, the whole armor of God, like the Bible says, right? So when
Mhm.
we're transforming the mind, transforming it into what? I transform my mind into faith, into peace, into confidence, the fruits
Mhm.
of the spirit, right?
Mhm.
A world of peace and joy and love, a world of community. So in order to do that, there's a transformation that takes place. So Dr. Wilbon, Dr. Matisa, I want you to talk about that transition when we've gone through a world of grief, but
Yeah.
transitioning back into life.
Yeah. I actually have never heard anyone sort of put the scripture in that way. I love that, Camille, this idea of the world to which we should not conform. I love that, but it is the renewing of our minds. I talk a lot about grief because that's my personal story.
Right.
Lots of things have gone on, and I've talked about this, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later. I did a TED talk on grief, and people were like, "Why grief? You could have talked about so many things." But the reason I did is because I've dealt with it. I had three of my cousins who died on the same day from a
Mm,
drug overdose. They were all doing drugs and got some there was fentanyl in the drugs, all
mm,
on the same day. I had a cousin who overdosed. I did his eulogy. Within 6 months, my brother had died, and there was addiction as a part of that. And I did his eulogy. I could go on and on. My mom passed
yep.
away in 2017. And so grief for me is such a tangible example, that as a believer, right, I know that God can bring you through. But I'll be honest in that there were times that I was conforming, if you use that same example, to the idea, let me say this, to the idea that with grief, I had to go into a dark place, right?
Hmm.
With my mom, I just got up and kept lifing. Like I preached, we laid my mom to rest. I preached at a mother-daughter tea the next weekend. Now, I would never advise anybody to do that,
Hmm.
but I thought I needed to just go on. I thought because I'm a minister and because I'm a leader,
Hmm.
right? And so I found myself going into a place that I didn't recognize. So I was publicly serving, but I was privately dying. I was
Mm,
privately in my bed with the windows, closed and my blinds shut. I was
mm,
privately unable to really play with my kids, my husband having to sort of take over, not wanting people to know, right?
Mhm.
And not realizing that there was something wrong. And so, to your question, how did I move from that place to life?
Mhm.
And I don't want to make it simple, but I'll be honest, I made a choice. I decided, because I had let grief really overtake me. I decided I love my mom. That was the time when it started. I love my family,
Mhm.
but I can't live here.
Right.
Cannot live here. It's taking over my mind. It's becoming the lens by which I see everything. And it doesn't mean that it was easy, Camille. It doesn't mean that I snapped my finger. Yeah, I was on autopilot. Doesn't mean that I snapped my finger and all of a sudden the grief is gone.
Mhm.
But when I made a choice, the grief became healthy, right? Let me say that to everybody watching.
Yes.
Grief is a gift. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to try to push away. It is a healthy way of expressing sadness.
Mhm.
And once I learned how to grieve in a healthy way, the darkness had to kind of go away. When
Mhm.
the grief comes now, even in waves, sometimes I let it sit with me. But I make a choice. I cannot live here. I want to live. And this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to you. I
You're
made the
doing a great job, Dr. Wilbon.
No, you get me talking about this, and I think it's just such an important thing to talk
Yes.
about for folks because we don't talk about it enough. But I made the decision that I wasn't going to live my mom's or my brother's or my cousin's death over and over and over again.
Mhm.
Sometimes what happens with grief is we get stuck in the day that they died and we
Mhm.
forget all of the years that they lived.
Wow.
So how
Can
do
you
I
say that again for the people in the back? Because I see people on social media, they'll post every year, 2 years later, 3 years, today was the day. Can we
Yeah.
kinda dig into that a little bit more, Dr. Wilbon?
Absolutely, and I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that
Right.
anniversary because 'cause I've done that.
Right, but don't stay there.
Yeah, so let's just say, I'll make this date up. The person passed away in 2000, on June 1st, 2015. Some people live June 1st, 2015 every single day of their
Call it
life,
marking the time. You're marking the time.
and you're stagnant.
Mhm.
You're literally stuck in that day. As opposed to saying, yes, this is the day that my loved one passed and it hurts, but there were 50 years before that, or there were
Mhm.
30 years before that. And what happens then, Camille, is you start to unlock the memories of life,
Mhm.
even if you commemorate the death. My God, that was good right there. Wait a minute.
That's a tweetable. That's a tweet.
Listen, you might commemorate the day of their death, but you unlock the memories of their life. And I'm telling you, when you do that, it brings a different perspective, a different sensibility. And let me say this: you don't have to grieve a loved one for the rest of your life, or be sad for the rest of your life in order to prove your love.
I love it. Um, you talking about that made me think about my father. So, 2019, I was still in the Navy. I was stationed in California.
Mhm,
At that time, I was in the process of processing out of the Navy or preparing to. I had just finished one of my degrees and applying for graduate school. And so I woke up one morning in July and I had missed like 13, 14 calls between my stepmom and my uncle.
mm,
And for some reason, I just knew I was like, something is wrong. It has to do with my father. And so my uncle, I called him and he was like, "Are you sitting down?" He was like, your father died late last night, early this morning.
mm,
He had a heart attack while he was driving. His car flipped. He hit a building and died at the scene.
Jesus.
At the time, we were not speaking just because I didn't meet him until I was 19. And so I'm the type of person, we can build relationship, but we need to talk about some things first. I wanted to have a conversation about him not being there.
Mhm,
He wanted to just pick up and move on. At the time, he was an interim pastor or was previously an interim pastor in the PAW under Bishop Paul Bowers,
mhm.
but he wanted to just focus on that and move on without talking about him not being a part of my life. And I'm like, no, we need to talk. He didn't want to have that conversation. And so as a result, we were not talking when he died. And so I was very hurt, very angry because the times I did talk to him, he was very combative. He would yell at me. It was just very bad. And so I thought to myself, and I told him, you cannot verbally abuse me, emotionally abuse me, and we not have this conversation. And I now realize that he was doing that because he was angry about his absence. And
Mhm.
so when he died, I had mixed feelings. I was sad, but I was upset. So long story short, I come to Charlotte, pandemic hits, boom. And I'm sitting here, it's New Year's Eve. I'm here by myself. I still have boxes everywhere. And I start crying because I was exhausted from leaving the Navy. They didn't want me to leave. That was a fight. Getting into grad school, I got in. That was a lot. Then it hit me about my father passing away. And this grief just sat on me, but I was angry at the same time. And
Sure.
as clear as day, I heard God say, I've dealt with him about how he handled you. Let it go. And it was like in that moment, I forgave him and that weight lifted off of me. But I
Yeah.
was so upset about not being able to talk to him. But God stepped in and had that conversation with my father on my behalf. And it was like, I dealt with him about you.
Yeah.
And so now looking back on things, it was a blessing in a way that he wasn't there because I was able to see some things I could not see. And so for me, grief was wrapped in anger. And
Sure.
I think sometimes we all grieve differently. We're sad, we're happy, but for me, it was anger. There was some rejection going on there. But in that moment, God just took all of that. And so now when I think of him, I don't have those feelings anymore. I actually have feelings of peace.
Mhm.
And that's right. He'll make intercession on your behalf. Actually, that's all right. So we all have a way of grieving. And so now when July comes around, when Father's Day pops up, I don't have that ache anymore. Because
Mm.
even though, yes, I grieved him and I grieved him through anger, but when God was like, I handled that for you, it's fine.
Yeah.
Let it go. It was like the grief, everything just lifted away.
That's amazing. And you know what you made me think about as you were talking, some people subscribe to the idea that you never stop grieving, and I understand that waves do come. So I don't want to tell anyone, if it's been 25 years and that sadness comes sometimes, that's understandable. It definitely does for me as well. But there is, when you think about it from a faith perspective, God is supernatural, right? I can't tell you when I felt better, especially after my mom passed away, because
Mhm.
that hit me like a ton of bricks. I just remember being able to breathe again. I remember in my grief, and like you said, there's anger, there are all of these various stages. For me,
Mhm.
I dealt with it with busyness. So when I talked about that public display, I was just going, going, going,
Autopilot, yes.
autopilot, so I didn't have to deal with it. But the more I went to God, and there are various strategies, even for folks who don't have faith. God is, for me, the very best way to deal with these things. But there are some strategies that people can use even outside of faith. But the point that I want to make is God can do something supernatural. I remember one day thinking, I can breathe today. Like, I feel better. I feel lifted. And I said that to say, for you and for other people, sometimes there's what I call compound grief. So you're grieving this absence from the Navy, even though it was good for you. That's still a different structure, a different routine. Like, you're out of what you've known. You're grieving the fact that you just moved. Here you are on New Year's night by yourself. There's some perhaps some grief in there, that you're grieving this father. You're grieving things that could not happen. Right? You couldn't have that conversation. But like you said, God came in, and now here's the supernatural part. He did what you could not do on your own, and he healed you in a way that only God could. And the reason that's important is because some people say, "Oh, I'm just going to be sad all of my life." There's going to be waves, but God can lift you in a way that only he can. And your example is a perfect example of that.
Awesome. And I love your transparency, and thank you for coming here, Dr. Wilbon. We're going to shift gears just briefly.
Sure.
You're an educator, you're an author, you've done all these phenomenal things. TED Talk, check, did it. So, what has been your inspiration getting into your field?
You know what? Family. I'm a sociologist by training. That started a long time ago when I was probably even before talking about the power of community, before I even got into college, I was a part of the band. Yes, I was a band nerd.
Oh,
Okay.
not a band. I did it in, junior high school. I played the clarinet and the flute.
So you understand the power
Yeah.
of music, the power of community. For me, even before I found a relationship with God, the band became my community. They were my tribe. They were my people. And so I understood being in the band, what it meant to be in a company of people who kind of thought like you. You know, we spent a lot of time together. And so for me, that was my very first taste of sociology, although I didn't know what the name was it for. You know, I
Mhm.
didn't know what the name of it was. Till I went to college, I took a sociology class. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the way that I think. This is my framework. Like, I understand people in terms of their environment and how they connect with other people, and where you grow up matters, and your religion matters, and all of these things that I thought intuitively. Once I took my first sociology class, it all clicked for me and made so much sense. So, and I was always a teacher, taught my brother how to tie his shoes, taught him how to ride his bicycle. All of those things were super important to me. Come on, band. Look at all these
One
band people.
one band, one sound. I love Drumline.
My favorite movie.
Ta, 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 ta. I love that.
You clearly have seen it a lot.
Terrible.
But you know what? Everybody can identify who's been, whether you've been in it for a long time or not, you can identify just the importance of it. It was super important for me because, again, it shaped me. Being in that community helped me have confidence, helped me have discipline, helped me learn how to be a winner, helped me to learn how to be a loser, right? It helped me to understand the power of working in teams, working together. All of that's sociology. And so when I took my first sociology class, long story short, I was already a teacher by nature. Sociology was the way I looked at the world by nature. So I was just like, I want to be a professor. The other thing is, I went to a predominantly white institution, a PWI.
Me too. MTSU.
So, anti-issue,
Middle Tennessee State.
gotcha. Oh, okay. I know that school. So being there and having no black faculty, I was like, we got to change this. So I made a decision as a freshman. I'm getting a PhD and I want to teach at a PWI because when students of color walk into the classroom, I want them to see a professor of color.
Because representation matters. I did not have my first black teacher until my freshman year of college in English.
I didn't have one all through college.
Wow.
Well, I
See,
take that back. We protested. That was my first taste of activism too. We protested and we were like, you gonna bring some black faculty on this campus. So
right.
by the time we were juniors, I think we ended up having one, not tenure track. That's a whole other conversation. This was just a visiting professor. And it's gotten better since, but
Mhm.
that was really when I started thinking about sociology teaching and activism. And God just used all three of those things throughout my life.
Awesome. I love it. I've been window shopping for the doctoral program. Um, but once this settles down and you know what I'm talking about, I will
Mhm.
probably pull your coattail on how to maneuver that lane. I definitely know will probably be women's studies, particularly Black women in media and communication, because that's where my master's is, and
Beautiful.
just how we're portrayed in media, and maybe go down that lane.
Mhm.
So that is a conversation for another time. But you're such an inspiration to me. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important that we do have representation in the classroom at every level, beginning with kindergarten, particularly with my brand, Good Black Men, seeing us in the classroom, just because even though I don't agree with everything he says, but some of the things from Dr. Umar Johnson when it comes to advocating in the classroom, testing,
Sure.
behavioral evaluations, and things like that, there is a disparity, there is discrimination. And I think I do believe we need our people in the classroom because we understand our kids, we understand our language, we understand our culture, and that's a conversation to be had as well. So I think that's very important in what you do, particularly in upper academia, is very powerful and very important. So thank you.
And that's the power of community too, right?
Mhm.
So, when I was teaching in Kentucky at a PWI, students would flock to me because again, you're seeing someone who reflects you. And it's not to say that they didn't have great classes with other kinds of professors, but as I would always say, it's a richer conversation and a richer experience. I and again, we can have this conversation, but
Yeah.
I immediately knew I was going to be faculty council president as soon as I stepped on campus. I already knew I was going to get tenure in 6 years, and that's the period of time. I already knew because I went there as a change agent.
Hmm.
And I said that to say, when I was faculty council president, I brought things up that nobody, because I was the first Black person to be in that position. So my lens was for people of color. I was like, well, what
Yeah.
about this? Why? People were like, I never thought of that. Not because they're ill intended,
But their society
or
was
experience.
portrayed in a way where they didn't have to think about it.
Yes. And so when you bring it up, I call myself a disruptor proudly. One of two things happened. Either for some people, they felt like, okay, here she goes again, and you feel the weight of that to some degree. But then most people were like, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up because we just never thought about it. And so, and that community was one where for the most part, they did invite difference and they did invite these kinds of conversations. And the power was, it didn't it didn't create division across the campus. Most people came together in various positions across different, ethnicities and all of that to make the whole better. And that's the power of community because it's not about me as an individual. It's about how can I make the whole better, right? Otto, going back to that scenario, he made the community better.
He
Even though it
did.
seemed like he was a curmudgeon and everybody talked about Otto, really, he was the one that kind of held that community together.
He did. Um, and and going back to the movie, the mom, she unlocked his or reminded him of his usefulness, right?
Yeah.
With the dishwasher and the kids and the babysitting, um,
Hmm.
some the driving, taught her how to drive. And to
That's
say, even in these latter years, and we may have people on here that are in the second stage, third leg of life,
mhm.
until you take your last breath, you still have use. You
Yeah.
still have purpose. You're still needed in the community. There are things still inside of you. I always use the analogy, we're like a package, right?
Yeah.
And the outside can be great, but we need to take off that lid, pull out the bubble wrap, pull out the tissue paper, and dig inside because God has placed all these little goodies inside of us. And I kind of always like to use the analogy of like when you go to Chick-fil-A or somewhere and you're eating your fries while you're driving, but there's always a few more fries down in the bottom of the bag. You might have to search around for it, but there's always those fries at the bottom of the bag, and you get excited all over again, like, oh, I've got more fries.
Happy.
and and we're like that. Like we think, oh, this is the end. I'm gassed out. But if you keep digging, you still have more fries.
Let me tell you something. I'm getting so excited talking about this. Listen, three quick examples, right? Mary is pregnant with Jesus, but the baby didn't leap until she was in the presence of Elizabeth, who was older. You got to have a Mary and an Elizabeth. The Bible tells us that he calls the young because they're strong and the old because they're wise. The Bible tells us in Titus that the older women are to be honored as they teach the younger. So I love what you're saying because sometimes in the world, quote unquote, we do value youth. Even people who are older, people want to dye their hair. They want to look a certain way. They want to remain youthful because society does value those kinds of things. But if we really look from a kingdom perspective, God always created it where generations would come together, not be divided, not replace the other, but that there would be a connection. I love the example of the fries because I do get excited for a Chick-fil-A fry at the bottom of my box. And I think if we could be more intentional about validating and helping everybody see their usefulness, again, power of community, then I think we're all going to be better for it.
I think that's very powerful. And even in, finding a church home, there are things in you that you might not even realize that you have that's there, and
Yeah.
you could be ignited, whether um a gift ignites or reawakens or something that was dormant.
That's
Maybe your dreams increase, maybe your prayer life increases, maybe you're getting more clarity when you read your word. We don't know, but you don't know those things until you get in the environment or the space of community. That's one of the things I love about Faith Covenant is that it's a healing place. It's a
yes.
place that reignites you, gives you life and vigor and hunger, not just in the church, but also in the community, the things that goes on,
Mhm.
with Matthew 25 or the boutique, so many other things going on, things for the kids. I've never in my life seen so many kids excited about coming to church and then how their community, they encourage each other.
That's right.
The married people, they have an amazing community. We just watched the cooks yesterday on the virtual gender reveal.
Well, yes.
Another little girl, I was like, yes, I was team girl. I knew it, and just to hear their story about this being their miracle baby. And even in that community, they've experienced grief because to go through, what they've gone through to get to here,
Yes.
that was an emotional up and down, right?
That's right.
And so when we look at different communities, whether if it's in higher academia or my sorority or church, they're your neighborhood, but you cannot stay closed off and shut down because life has lifed you. It's okay to pause and reset, but
That's right.
don't stay there, right? Because you have a voice and the world needs to hear it. Your neighbors need to hear your voice. We need to see you. You need to show up every day. It's okay. We can all have a day. Like I told you yesterday, today, and today I had a day. But
Yeah,
now it's like, okay, let's figure it out. Reset. If you have to be quiet for a little while, fine. But don't stay there.
that's right. That's right. And you don't have to stay there. I mean, I do think it's natural, and we've said this, but I want to make sure we keep sharing it. When sometimes when life comes, it is natural to put those walls up. But the reality is for all of us, we want community. We want people to love on us. We want a tribe. We want someone to bring the best out of us. And I love that you referenced, our church, Faith Covenant Church, because it really is that. I mean, it's so exciting. I laugh all the time when I see people who are getting up to do the welcome or to do something in front of the church who never sang before. They've never,
Yeah,
they've
Camilo Pollard just dropped his new album over the weekend.
James Fortune, at our
Hey,
church.
we got James Fortune.
James Fortune, exactly. People get the mic, and there's such a support though. You're singing or you're doing whatever. And people are like, go ahead. That's a part of our culture. Like our culture is to really support each other. And you're able to find the tribe. It's a large church, so everybody doesn't just hang out together. But there are people who connect on various levels. If you're, in music, the choir folks, I see them going out all the time too. We have our tribes. We have various opportunities to really connect because we do understand that there is power in community, power in togetherness, and that's the culture that our pastor really tries to foster.
Yes, he applies the weight every week, even to his knee sweats. I was like, Lord, who sweats their knees out?
I don't know how he's even standing at the end of the Sunday.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. Dr. Wilbon, we've talked about so many things. Do you have a nugget or gem that you would like to leave for our viewers and listeners? Because I definitely want to bring you back. Those that don't know, this is season 11 of the Speaker Podcast, and we are closing out this season and going on summer break because I'm tired. And so we'll be back in the fall. But until we come back, just trying to drop a few little words of wisdom on us until you come back.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, first of all, I'm excited that this is my first time, but it won't be my last time. Thank you for saying that.
Mhm.
I do hope you get some rest, and I'm so, so proud of everything that you're doing.
Thank
I
you.
love this topic. I would just say to everybody watching, those who will watch the replay, a couple of things. Number one, this, in the words of the evangelist Latrice Ryan, you are somebody to God. I just want you to hear that. You are somebody to God. You matter. What you have gifts inside of you. Some you know, some you don't know. And I believe that being in the presence of other people, that's what's really going to bring all of those things out of you.
Mhm.
Not only are you somebody to God, but you matter to people. I don't know, I'll speak to those who might have dealt with folks who betrayed you, who treated you wrong, who betrayed your trust. Hear me when I say I'm sorry that that happened to you, but that there are people who are going to love on you, support you, and who will not let you die. And we don't, even if we don't mean that literally, figuratively, won't let your dreams die, won't let your vision die, won't let your ministry die, won't let you die in terms of your personality. There are people who are going to be in your life and who should be in your life who make you better. And if the people around you don't, change the people that you're around. God's got a bigger plan for you. Even you watching this, not coincidence, not happenstance. It's because God is trying to get a message to you. There is power in you that will only be pulled out by the power of the community that you're a part of.
Awesome. And did you have any books and you did a TED Talk. So where can people go watch the replay on that?
Absolutely. So I did a TED Talk called Good Grief. So if you're dealing with grief, loss, not just of a loved one, but the loss of anything, I cover it in this TED Talk. So you can go to YouTube, type in TED Talk and my name, and it'll come right up. Please share it. Let someone else know about it. I'm also an intercessor. That is my lifeline and my bloodline. I wrote a book called Undefeated Prayer Never Loses. No matter what you deal with in life, you can always defeat it, go through it with prayer. You can go on Amazon.com to find that book. I'm also a coach. My coaching program is called Disrupt 365 because we disrupt over here. We pull down all of those negative systems, whether they're in our mind or even outside of us, and we rebuild so that we can be all that God has for us to be. So if you're interested, go to matisawilbon.com. Anything in ministry or lots of things that I've done just in terms of speaking, you can Google me on you and go on my YouTube page. Lots of stuff, content there. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everyone, Faith Covenant came in deep tonight. Tribe 3 is here. I'm Tribe 1, Trey, Jessica, Ebony, Adelia, Kia, Deacon Jared, the Tuckers, Regina, Angela, Celeste. My name is Camille Celeste. So Celeste, hey girl. Cameo, Carisha.
Wow, that's the job.
Yes. Nancy. See who else is here. Q. Let's see. Quite a few people. Trey said, put your weight on it. Alicia, hey girl. So many people. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We are pushing to get to that 10,000 download. We're right there, right up about 8.5. So we're going to keep pushing it out. If you have not done so, I'm also streaming on all the streaming platforms like Pandora, iHeartRadio, Audible on Amazon, Spotify, out there. So I'm going to, it's just me. I say we like I have a team. I am going to start pushing out the streaming episodes. So if you have not done so, subscribe so you can get those notifications. In addition, just as a reminder, I'm on various platforms such as YouTube. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, y'all. I am building up my channel. So hop over there right now and subscribe. Also, I am on Instagram and Facebook. My information is right here. In addition to that, my room fragrance collection, Chemistry, is also on Instagram. Amazing room scents available. I hand blend everything myself. Trust me, you're going to love it. It smells so good, y'all. Believe me, you love it. Thank you, Adelia. Thank you. This season, I've learned so much from my guests and myself personally. It's definitely been a journey. A lot of times the conversation I feel like maybe for the audience, but then I'm like, oh, that was for me too. So even though we're in this seat and I do the show for you all tonight, Dr. Wilbon, you bless all of us. Definitely appreciate it. You have so many things going on. Like I said at the beginning of the show, you were on a cruise. Now you're here. Thank you. I will see you this weekend. I'm super excited to see everybody. I've been homesick, so I'll be driving down this weekend to join, excuse me, the Faith Covenant family. If you did not catch everything tonight, no worries. The replay will be available on my YouTube channel and that will be there as well. I think we've covered everything. So with that being said, you all, this is Camilla Essick. I am the host of the Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast where innovators and creators connect. I'll see you all in the fall. You all be safe this summer. Happy Juneteenth, y'all. Peace.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Chemistry Room Fragrances is the perfect addition when elevating the vibe of any space. Whether if it's your home, car, or office, and something needs a quick refresh, our room fragrances provide that beautiful burst of fragrance with just one quick mist. Shop now at www.chemistryroomfragrances.com and be sure to follow us on Instagram at Chemistry Room Fragrances. Chemistry Room Fragrances. Smells so good.